Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all fandoms, welcome to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 110. I am the Angry Raccoon, and yes, I am your only host for this podcast. You could probably already tell given how short this podcast was, but things have been a bit all over the place for the most part. I mean, February has passed, and February was kind of like a nothing month apart from maybe like a few highlights for the most part. But we're already in March and hopefully things are looking up. I mean, given some of the stuff we're going to talk about in this podcast, we should be in a much better place in terms of 2019 actually being a significant year. But it's just me on this podcast, and I don't really have that much to talk about, to be honest. I've kind of pieced together a little bit more of a, personal podcast, so hopefully you guys will enjoy that. I guess we'll start it off with the things I've been doing over the last 2 weeks since the last podcast. First thing I did was I watched a film which I've been meaning to see the sequel of for quite some time, and that was Rec 2, kind of spelled as R-E-C, as in record. This is obviously the sequel to Rec. This kind of is a interesting film that kind of takes place right after / during the events of the first film, which for those of you who don't know, it's I believe is a Spanish found footage horror kind of zombie-esque film. The execution of the first film was done fantastically, and this is the sequel, which does take a very similar but very different approach that definitely works as a sequel. It's kind of what you would expect. I kind of don't want to spoil exactly what it does, but it's basically what happens and what would understandably happen if those events in that film did happen. This one's not as good as the first one, personally. I still think it's a enjoyable film, but I kind of didn't like the direction of where the story was going for the most part. The first film was kind of ambiguous, and this film does kind of keep the ambiguity for the most part, but it spends way too long on exposition and kind of explaining itself when it really didn't. We kind of got what was going on for the most part just through visuals and just through interpretation, so it was a bit odd for the film to then go, no, this is why this is happening. You know, it's fine if you want to explain something as extreme as that, but, you know, it felt a bit much for the most part. And also there was some very questionable I guess you could say character decisions in this film, along with some really dumb characters. If you've seen the film you might know what I mean. I really didn't like a certain group of characters that appeared in the film, and one of my least favorite cliches and kind of writing, especially horror writing, is whenever a character doesn't want to go, either scared or just stubborn, as I won't go, I won't do this, but yet somehow they will just go anyway, and then they're usually the first people to regret this. I really didn't like that. I know there's 2 more films, Rec 3 and 4. I can't remember the names. They have very generic names, I think it's Genesis and Apocalypse. I've seen, I guess, the trailers and read about them. Not interested at all. I'm just going to leave it at Rec 2 because that was a fitting ending in my opinion. The other thing I watched was a TV series I've been meaning to watch for a long time, and I think this is kind of a very important British comedy for the most part, and it's I'm probably going to mispronounce the second name, although I think that might be part of the point of the second name of this character, and that's Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. Now, this is a very interesting TV series where it essentially focuses around this character, this very, how should you put it, egotistical, horror, Stephen King-esque, hints of racism, sexism, writer, Garth Marenghi, and it kind of centers around him finally debuting and showing his 1980s TV series based on his ideas and his imagination, as he puts it, his dreamscape for whatever. And it kind of is us seeing this TV series that got cancelled, I believe by Channel 4, let's just say, interspliced with interview/commentary from the actors in the show playing other characters of actors playing themselves. So there's a lot of levels to this series. So it's basically a parody of a parody, and it's characters playing characters, or actors. No, yeah, actors playing a character for the most part. So, and it's a very interesting series because its aesthetic of 1980s kind of exploitation, so bad it's good, kind of Twilight Zone-esque, egotistical. I don't even know how you say it. It's kind of a tricky series to explain, but it's done masterfully. If you're a big fan of things like, let's say, spoof movies, like the good spoof movies like Aeroplane and what's the other one I'm trying to think, and Naked Gun and stuff like Black Dynamite, you'll absolutely love this film, especially if you understand the inner workings of like filming, editing, stuff like mixing, and because the series is a very funny series just from a lot of the ideas and ridiculousness of it, and a lot of the very strong writing, but there's a lot of comedy that comes through, a lot of the bad editing, continuity errors. I mean, there's literally one point where I'll use because I can't remember the actual characters' names, because obviously this is, an actor playing basically two characters. You have Dean, who is essentially the producer on, Dark Place, played by Richard Ayoade, who can't act. Like, his character as a producer cannot act, and it is very blatant because if you watch his character, a lot of the time he's just standing there, he's looking at the camera, he's very clearly not comfortable acting, and he delivers his lines so still, and there's so many continuity issues with just him, along with the, I guess, female lead, I guess you could say, Liz, who is completely, because this is a 1980s TV series, who is completely disrespected simply because she is a woman, and that's where a lot of the I guess comments towards Darth Marenghi being racist and sexist come, because the show is very sexist, but it also addresses sexism within writing and television of the time of 1980s. So it's very clever in that respect. It is not trying to, be sexist. It's addressing sexist in a comedic and media-based way. This is a fantastic series if you have not seen it, especially if you are not British, or especially if you're young. I would love to know if this kind of show works with audiences outside England, especially younger audiences, because it's downright believable, honestly. And I don't really want to spoil too much about the series. I kind of just want you to go into it if you can. I believe it is on Channel 4 On Demand, which is the Channel 4's service where you can watch all their television. Please go and watch it if you haven't seen it before. One thing to get slightly audiences of my generation interested in it, you could also consider this series a spiritual sequel to The Mighty Boosh. And I'll kind of leave it at that. I'll let people kind of speculate for the most part. I'm going to be talking about Mighty Boosh a lot in the next coming weeks, just to leave that hint. And the other thing I was doing over the last few weeks is organizing my Twitter account, the Angry Raccoon Twitter account, which is what I leave in the download link in the description, where you can follow me for whatever reason. I've been trying to get rid of as many tweets as possible, just because it's gotten very cluttered, and a lot of them are things I want to go back and kind of reference, archive for various means. In doing so, I've realized that Twitter is a very flawed system. I mean, I already knew that, but I know it now even more because I cannot access all of my thousands of tweets, which is very frustrating because eventually I'm going to hit a wall. Not great, because I have important stuff which I won't be able to access, which has kind of annoyed me big time because I don't really know what to do. If anyone has a solution for me to be able to untweet, because that was what I was doing. I was going back on my timeline, untweeting everything, saving what I need to, and kind of letting, the new stuff kind of, or the old stuff kind of build back up so it's less of a count. If anyone knows a free, easy, simple way that I can actually get access to organize, the thousands of tweets I've made, please let me know. I would really appreciate that. And hit me up, I guess, at my Twitter, ironically, or at our email, raccoonplusfriends@gmail.com. And let's move on to our general fortnight stuff now. Things have been pretty crazy in the world for the most part. The first thing we want to talk about is Keith Flint, the lead singer of Prodigy, passing away at age 49, which was it's very sad to have the lead singer of such an important, like, kind of can't even speak, excuse me, break beat, big beat slash dance rock, a little bit of like punk-ish inspired band, especially an English band, die, and he died way too young. I mean, if you've never listened to the 1997 album, The Fat of the Land, which is regarded as one of their best albums, and to some respects regarded as one of the best albums of all time throughout music history, I would highly recommend it. It's an amazing album, even if you are of a younger age, even if you're not into that kind of genre of music. Please definitely give that a listen. I think your I guess you could say musical horizon would probably be expanded, I guess you could say. I don't want to sound pretentious, but I'm trying to think of the right words to kind of get people to really listen to this band and kind of show the band and Keith some kind of respect. I mean, and also if you haven't seen the music videos for Firestarter, which is obviously their most famous song, obviously, and Breathe, as well as Smack My Bitch Up, especially see if you can, if you're over the age of 18 or let's say 16, try and find the full explicit version of Smack My Bitch Up, because it is a really fantastic music video. But yeah, it's very sad, because I mean, Keith himself, I mean, I think most people, even if they don't know of Prodigy, don't know of Firestarter, I think they know of the guy just through looks. I mean, he has the iconic spiked, devil horn hair, and he displayed a very great level of energy whenever performing, even within music videos at festivals, gigs and stuff like that, which I really appreciated. Definitely had a very kind of punk vibe aesthetic, kind of, the whole band had that, kind of carried that influence for the most part. And you can definitely see that within any of their performances if you watch them. And it's kind of interesting because they always rocked hard, and they were always about that kind of lifestyle, the energy, kind of giving the energy out, giving the energy back, feeding off it, kind of that relationship with the crowd, which you don't see as much. Granted, not every music artist is about, kind of like, getting the energy, giving the energy back, that kind of stuff, but you don't see it as much. Some bands who rock hard really don't rock as hard as they think they do. And Keith was a genuine nice guy for the most part. If you see this guy in interviews, you see the way he talks about things and stuff, like, he kind of does come about with a lot of respect and a lot of heartfelt, like, kind of the way he spoke about things, especially when he was speaking about, there's an interview when he's talking about band System of the Dam and how he appreciated the fact that they were able to come out there and really kind of take on the younger generation and kind of, get the crowd hyped and kind of give them energy. And he was a very funny guy as well. There's a clip of him, if you can find it, of him in a suitcase talking about how it's his hotel, his 5-star hotel or whatever, and a great interview he did, I don't know when, where this interviewer was essentially asking him, it's what does your mum think of like the hairstyle and all that, and he's like, it's she likes it, she understands it, and this interview was like almost very ruthless to try and get him to like kind of say, oh, happy Mother's Day, Mum, for whatever reason. I don't know what this interviewer was on. I guess he thought that it would be funny to have someone like him say Happy Mother's Day, whatever, it was the 90s, I guess. And it gets to the point where Keith's like, no, she's not here, she never see it. And it gets to the point where the guy's like, no, please, come on, just say into the camera, Happy Mother's Day. And he just goes, no. Which is fantastic. That's the kind of person he was, and it is saddening to have him pass away and have him gone. His presence, or lack of presence, unfortunately, will be very much missed. And I definitely wanted to reference him because, once again, I think him, the band, and a lot of his songs are very important in music history and culture in general. So I wanted to pay respects to my man. One other thing I wanted to talk about, kind of, as soon as we are on, I guess, a saddening and slightly dark topic for the most part, as soon as it's just me, is I kind of want to address the knife crime issue within England, which has been brought back up within the media and the news for the most part, because although they are saying it is, on the rise, it's I guess a big deal. I can't remember the exact words. An epidemic, you could say. To kind of address, kind of this media hype, it is not an epidemic that has come out of nowhere. It is unfortunately an epidemic that has been around for far too long. The only reason they are saying it's on the rise is because it's become to their attention that way too many people have unfortunately been victims of these stabbings. And one thing the media will not actually tell you is that a lot more stabbings have actually happened than they would actually let you know about. These recent ones are probably 5 within 10 that have happened in the last month. Some of them are unfortunately local, so they do not, that doesn't make big news because it's not a big deal. And granted, not everyone who gets stabbed is as important as the next. It is the sad truth. That is how the media and the news works to unfortunately drive, their agenda. But besides that, I kind of want to talk to those of you who are in England, who are still within school, whether that's primary school, secondary school, college, definitely those of you who are young, especially those of you who are walking home alone, who are out in the fresh air, enjoying your weekends, to basically stay safe and stay smart for the most part. Wherever you are, please, whatever you do, make sure you get home as fast as possible. Whether you're coming home from school, stay in a small group with friends for as long as possible. Try not to be on your own for as much as possible. Try to stay on the main roads where there's cars, where there's CCTV cameras, so that if anything, God forbid, does happen to you or anyone you know, at least there will be evidence, and hopefully we can find whoever has done this for the most part. And if you are traveling on your own for whatever reason, my best advice, hide those headphones. Don't even bother with it. Just stay alert. Try not to wear popular brands that definitely are eye-catching, because I think, although I can't pinpoint the exact reason why young people are getting attacked or why young people are attacking others, it might be due to jealousy, the preconceptions of what they might think of you based on where they're coming from. So please, don't wear brands that might cause certain reactions or might provoke jealousy. It's just wear as plain as you can. Just try and blend in with everyone else. If anything does happen, scream, shout, move, get as safe as possible. It's very tricky. I don't know why this is happening in this country. I know why, but I'm not going to go into it. But please just stay safe for the most part. It really is saddening, because I've been in situations and witnessed situations of, attackings, and it's never pleasant. And I do not like the simple fact that within this country, given everything that's happening right now, that this is something that children can't even, walk the streets safe. Once again, it's very upsetting, and I kind of just wanted to address that soon as it is a bigger topic and kind of, take the floor and kind of discuss this. So yeah, that's kind of upsetting time done for the most part. I think after that, let me get a quick drink as we move on to, I guess, our main news topics for the most part. Oh god, I made a lot of noise there. So as I kind of mentioned, this is going to be a short podcast for the most part. It's been one of those weeks in terms of, let's say, trailers, where a lot of, I guess, film studios don't really release anything new. They kind of just drop their second trailer, and unfortunately we've already kind of covered these films. There's a second trailer for the film Brightburn, which is coming from James Gunn and I believe his brother, which is that I guess horror take on Superman, I guess you could say, as well as another trailer for Shazam, which we talked about time ago, which is I'm not going to talk about that again. Also, the Game of Thrones season 8 trailer came out. I've not watched Game of Thrones. I can't remember where exactly everyone, in terms of people who usually appear in this podcast, are in terms of Game of Thrones, so me talking about it would be just pointless, because I wouldn't know what's going on. I don't watch Game of Thrones. It means nothing to me. And also within the world, most people are playing Devil May Cry 5 for the most part, which finally came out. The only thing I have to say about Devil May Cry 5 is Capcom is back. And also people are basically screaming at each other about Captain Marvel. So yeah, that's why I've kind of been avoiding Twitter, because it's just stupidness. Like, really, come on guys, grow up. But let's move on to some positive stuff. We got one of 2 trailers to talk about. The first is going to be on a game. It is going to be on Pokemon Sword and Shield. it was funny because out of nowhere, it felt like Nintendo basically just stated, "Oh, there's going to be a Pokemon Direct on the a Nintendo." Oh, no, yeah, it was a Pokemon Direct on the 27th of February, and they basically announced Sword and Shield, which is the next generational game, which is pretty cool, and the internet was instantly set on fire once that came out, because obviously it's Pokemon, so why wouldn't people be excited for something like that? And we got a very brief trailer, didn't show too much off, but it was more or less a confirmation trailer, and it was a very good move of them to have the next mainline game be on Switch. It's definitely going to help the system's growing library of games / exclusives, as well as, kind of keep sales nice and steady, because it's Pokemon. People are going to buy the game. People are going to be happy. More people are going to buy the game for the Pokemon game they want to play. I'm a bit sad that I'm a bit sad that I'm going to have to wait a little while to play this game, because I do not own a Switch, but soon, and hopefully someday. But yeah, the English or England-inspired setting is really cool to see. It's a nice direction for the most part, because how should I put this? You can do a lot more with a setting like this, because I think England is one of those countries where there's a lot of differences in terms of its visual look. So, for example, most people, when they think of England, they think of London City, but other people from England will probably think of like the countryside and other places like that. So I can definitely see this game kind of having some very nice visuals, such as like hilltop landscapes looking over like countryside farms, which instead of having like cows and sheep, being herded, or in grassland areas, you probably have Pokemon there, or I would love to see like a seaside, like kind of area, very much like places like Blackpool. That's the stuff I'm really looking forward to in terms of like the world and what they do with this English setting. Hopefully, I know they're going to do a good job, because England is such a it never gets tapped into for the most part, which is a bit of a shame. It's a very good setting for video games, and not to mention it, Devil May Cry 5 is set in England for I don't know how much. I haven't seen that much of the game, but yeah, more people need to base their games in Europe. Is what I'm saying. I'm really digging the new Pokemon designs, or the new starters, I should say. They're the main ones we've seen so far. We have Grookey, which is the, grass monkey. In case I'm pronouncing them incorrectly, I'll spell them. So that's Grookey, so like monkey. We have Scorbunny, that's Shorbunny, which is the kind of very fidgety-esque fire rabbit character, which I really like. And we have Sobble, Sobble, which is kind of like this gecko lizard thing, which seems to kind of always be crying or in distress. It's a interesting bunch of characters. They definitely have characteristics in them which I really do like. Scorbunny is my favorite, much like a lot of other people, because the main reason I like him is because he's basically Max from Sam and Max, the Freelance Police. If you don't know what that character looks like, just type in Sam and Max and you'll understand exactly what I mean. He's probably going to be the one I pick. I do wonder what they're going to do with these characters. Obviously, there's theories going around as what their evolution's going to be, what they're going to turn out to be. I know a lot of people are hoping that Scorbunny does not become a firefighting type, because for whatever reason we've had too many of them. I personally don't think we have. It's not really something that bothers me. I don't know why people really harp about that. If you know, let me know. But I don't think he's going to be a firefighting. Obviously, there's implications to suggest he seems to there's a big emphasis on his feet for the most part, whether they're like red hot kick, kickboxer. He was kind of running on something, flames and stuff like that. I know people have suggested with the name Scorbunny, people are suggesting maybe football, which doesn't make sense to me. I'm thinking he's going to be either firefighting or fire fairy. That's my guess. But we shall see. The other two I don't really know what to make of, because I don't know. I hope that with the Sobble, he kind of gets bigger and a bit more emotional. He looks more emotional in his evolutions. And Sword and shield is interesting. I have no idea what that could imply. Whether that's referring to legendaries, I have a feeling it might be referring to item/story. I have a feeling that maybe we're not necessarily going to have a legendary Pokemon that is, although it is a bit of a joke, shaped like a sword, shaped like a shield, we're going to have a sword/shield item wielded by a chosen person or Pokemon. That's my theory, but it will be interesting to see what happens. We haven't seen enough to really kind of call too much judgment on, but I'm really looking forward to this game for the most part. And I'd love to know what other Pokemon fans think of this game. Hit us up at raccoonplusfriends.gmail.com if you want to share your thoughts and theories and your leaked Pokemon, as soon as everyone's doing that when it's always just fan art. Next trailer we want to talk about is one I've kind of been keeping my eye on, and finally we got a trailer for it, and it is Midsommar. Excuse me. I'm guessing it's named after the British kind of traditional, I guess, Midsummer festival kind of festival event, I guess you could say, and it's for those of you who probably never heard the term, it's spelled Midsommar. In order so I don't get confused and others don't get confused, I'm just going to call it Midsummer. And watching this trailer, I was getting some serious Suspiria, the 1977 film vibes from it, especially the breathing and the music and kind of like the setting and location of it, this very particular setting for what's going on. Without trying to spoil Suspiria, if you've not seen the original 1977 film, please do. It's fantastic. And watching this trailer, I was kind of thinking to myself, if you find yourself in the presence of British white-raced people wearing white clothes, you need to get the hell out of there big time, because that is some creepy, messed up stuff. There are some things in England, not necessarily cult stuff, but there's some very traditional, let's just say, stuff, and that might be where influence is being pulled. I mean, obviously, Midsommar does refer to, English festivals, traditions, events, for the most part. Should say as well, this is Ari Aster. I believe that's how you say his name, spelled Ari. Aster. This is his second debut feature-length film after 2018's Hereditary, a film I still haven't seen yet. People keep telling me you'll probably like this film. People keep telling me you'll probably hate this film. I don't know what to think of this film. It looks interesting. I know people are very split on it. I think people are going to be very split on this film because it looks creepy as hell, much like all that I've seen from Hereditary. But interestingly enough, we kind of have, it's not really a staple, we kind of have the creepiness that was found in some of his other short films as well as Hereditary. But we also have this almost too bright, summery cinematography change. It's a nice change up from what I gather from Hereditary being very dark and almost dirty for the most part. So it's interesting because it makes sense. It's a summer setting, festival, England, that's kind of what you would think. So I'm really liking this massive difference in setting. And also, cult festival is a perfect setting for a horror film. Much, going back to the Suspiria comparison, where it being set in a very fantastical dance school. This is very much a cultish, maybe fantastical, depending on what these people are doing. It's interesting though. The trailer doesn't give off too much other than some very cryptic and kind of cultish, disturbing visuals. There are definitely some eye-opening scenes in this trailer, which I really do like. I'm very interested to see what actually happens within this film. I believe the main character, I didn't actually look this up because I wasn't sure. I think she might be deaf, which is interesting, because that might be a very interesting, plot point to which how they might treat her. They might be like, oh, we can cure you, or stuff like that. I'm also very, very, very worried about the black guy in this film. I don't really have to say anything else other than, get out. But, there are some very creepy visuals in this film, and I really don't know what to think about it, and I think that's maybe the intention of the film. I mean, first of all, if you're going to a festival that only happens every 90 years, then you're kind of asking for trouble for the most part. And secondly, I really don't want to know what's going on in that barn house. That was just a bit too creepy. Like, I don't even want to think about it. Like, that shot, although I don't even know the complete context of it, that was chilling and creepy enough, because I'm already thinking about the most awful, disgusting things that could possibly be going on with this. I mean, there's not a lot of men in that, I guess, in this place, this cult, and I'm kind of half expecting someone to put on like an animal's head at some point. There was a shot where someone was opening up an animal, which was pretty disturbing. But yeah, I'm half expecting someone to put on a animal's head and start running around and doing God knows what to who knows what. But yeah, actually really looking forward to this film. It's definitely going on my list. Hopefully we'll get some screenings. Obviously, coming from the director of Hereditary, I think there's going to be big promotion for this film. Hopefully it turns out good. Will this be a crowd pleaser? I don't think it will, because it looks disturbing as hell. But we'll see. I'm interested in it. So yeah, and that kind of concludes our trailers. I have a very interesting, how should I put it, discussion. Although it's not really a discussion. It's more of a, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a way to kind of phrase this. But essentially what I'm going to be doing is talking about, or going through my lists, of Record Store Day 2019, my want list. Now, Record Store Day is a event that happens every single year where all the music industry and labels come together to essentially release exclusive re-releases, never before heard, put on vinyl, must-haves, collectible vinyl and music, for one day only, being sold on this day, which this year is falling on April the 13th. So we are just over a month away from it. And as usual, I went through the list, I combed through it, I listened to stuff I'd never heard before, and basically, to do something different, I kind of just want to go over my list now, not my whole list, because already looking at my list, which I didn't write down, I have over 30, and I'm not going to go over 30 because, number one, I'm not going to buy 30 vinyls because they are unfortunately going to be overpriced. I'm going to be very surprised if any of them are going to be under £20, and secondly, that's going to be boring because it's audio. And in a perfect world, I could sit here and I could play you these tracks and I can talk about how I love them, and we can go into some kind of discussion on why we do or don't like these songs, or why they're important and why they're not. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. So instead, I'm just going to go over a few songs that they're not all songs, a few, I guess, picks, records, let's just call them, vinyls, that I definitely would love to pick up, and my reasons why. So just as a nice kind of change of pace for the most part. So the first one I want to talk about is 808 State, the 4 states of 808. This is essentially going to be a collection of 808 states. A few of their other songs. It's like a collection of their stuff. 808 State has probably one of the most famous 80 instrumental kind of like synth electronic songs of all time, being Pacific. You only got to look up the song 808 State Pacific to understand why that is such an important and interesting song. I am a big fan of that song and the band and the sound, so obviously I'm going to be picking this up. It is a box set, so I don't know if I am going to pick it up 100% because it will most likely be expensive. I believe it's going to be on 4 discs, hence the name 4 States. Yeah, want to add it to the collection. Next one I want to talk about is going to be a single. That's going to be Anderson .Paak with Bubblin'. Now, this was probably one of the best songs, which I kind of didn't mention or talk about too much, from 2018, coming from Anderson .Paak's last album. Now, this is a really fun, catchy song that isn't like quite dumbed down for radio, but it's I love this song because it's essentially, bubbling implies, it's in reference to, you know, having money, being in the riches, you know, kind of being in that state of being like wealthy. And it's a very comedic song, especially the music video. If you have not seen the music video for Bubbling, please watch the music video because it is fantastic. It's definitely over the top and out there for the most part. Next one I want to talk about really quickly is Captain Beefheart Trout Mask Replica. The infamous Trout Mask Replica. Most people have probably seen this album cover. It's essentially the album cover with a guy and he has like a fish for a face and a hat on. This is a very... this one splits people's opinions because most people hail it as one of the most interesting and most experimental albums to ever be released, while a lot of other people consider it to be absolute nonsense and trash. Now, my opinions on this album is I'm both. I think this album is an absolute mess, but I think it is a fantastic and interesting listen. It's all over the place, and that's kind of why I like it for the most part. It's odd and interesting, and great. It's weird. Of all the albums / records, I really can't explain this. Try and listen to this if you can. Try and get into it if you can. It's quite a challenge. It's a challenging album, simply put, because it's weird and it's out there. It's very much like to some respects, it's like Beck's first album, where that album is basically a dance album, despite the fact Beck has never made anything like it since. Next song I want to talk about is actually a song, and that's going to be Emerson, I believe it's Emerson, Emersan, I believe that's how you say Emerson. I have no idea, I've never seen this name before, with his release of If You Need Me, Call Me. Now, I was not aware of Emerson, let's just call him that, until I actually heard the song Sending All the Love Out, which is one of those rare tracks where it was super lo-fi recorded, not the greatest quality, but it's such a synth banger. Like, this track goes in, like, the guy can sing, he's holding them notes. It's a very interesting song. It's one of those songs where when you hear it, you can hear how it was recorded, basically. And there's a lot of heart in the song, especially the idea where, you know, he's literally, you know, regarding someone who might not be in a great situation with friends and family. They're maybe alone. And, you know, as he kind of, you know, very heartfully sings, you know, I'm sending all the love out, you know, interspliced with like samples of like some guy going, family, you know. It's very much of the time, and it's a great little track, and I'm kind of glad they are releasing it for the first time on vinyl, I believe. I don't know. Do not quote me on that. Next thing I want to talk about is Gorillaz. Of course, Gorillaz being one of my favorite bands of all time, they are releasing The Fall on vinyl for the first time. This album is a very interesting one. It's technically the fourth Gorillaz album. A lot of people forget about this album, kind of understandably, because they kind of just dropped it out of nowhere. It might still be, but I remember at the time it is regarded as the fastest recorded album of all time. It was recorded in just under 30 days while they were touring during Plastic Beach. And it is an interesting album. I kind of consider it a part 2 to Plastic Beach, where it's a little bit more ambient, a little bit slower. There's a lot more vocals from 2D for the most part, and it's an interesting album. It's definitely got some creative and odd moments on it. There are great tracks like I can't remember the track. I'm so bad with like song names on albums. Little Pink Plastic Bags, you know, and there's like the Joplin Spider, which is like a really weird bit of like techno electronic stuff which samples two guys talking about a spider. It's weird. It's an odd album, but it's very interesting. Kind of really glad to have it on vinyl. Another thing I want to talk about really quickly, one thing I was not expecting for them to release, Luther Vandross, My Body, Louis Vega remixes. Now, I think most people know of Luther Vandross. He has one of the most iconic voices in music. Most people know all of his songs for the most part. I especially do. And this is Louis Vega, one half of Masters at Work, a absolute monster and legend within the house dance scene throughout the 80s and 90s, remixing a lot of Luther Vandross's most famous songs. I've heard a few of the remixes. They go in. So I'm looking forward to getting this collection. Hopefully it's not too expensive. Next thing, which I think might be a big seller in Record Store Day, and that is going to be the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Oh no, the League... Yes, I always say that. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is a comic. The League... the League of Gentlemen, which is the comedy series, the BBC One comedy series, the Live Again, which is their recording of... the stage show, as well as the Mighty Boosh, the complete radio series, being released on vinyl for the first time. Now, this is old media being released on old media for the first time in a complete collection. I need this. Like I said, I'm gonna be talking about Mighty Boosh for the next month. This I think will be a big seller for the most part, so I cannot wait to hopefully get this. So I'm looking forward to it for the most part. And I know a lot of people probably are. I know there are a lot of big Mighty Boosh fans, especially people of my generation. Winding down through my list, I'm definitely going to try and get the Peddlers song, On a Clear Day. I had not heard of the Peddlers. I believe there's... Yeah, the Peddlers. Yeah, excuse me. I had not heard of this song, nor the band. And after hearing this song, my God, it's like such a beautiful track. Like, the lead singer has a very interesting register and tone, and I guess a voice for the most part. And he has a very sombering yet powerful, deep voice. And the way he sings is just like truly amazing. Like, definitely look up this track. I haven't heard it enough, but I know I love it, and I definitely want it on like vinyl, so hopefully that should be enough. Next thing, Pink Floyd, Sourceful of Secrets, Pink Floyd's second album being re-released, remastered. I'm looking forward to this. Big Pink Floyd fan, I am. Last year in Record Store Day, they re-released their first album, The Pied Piper at the Gates of Dawn. It was a remaster, and they did a really good job with that in terms of packaging. Hopefully they're going to do the same with this, and I'm also kind of low-key hoping that they're going to, each year for Record Store Day, re-release a Pink Floyd album, so I can build up that collection. I would like that till eventually we get to Dark Side of the Moon, their most famous album, because, my God. Last few, Roxy Music, debut album remixes. I'm a big fan of Roxy Music. Roxy Music is an interesting band, simply because, they have a very unique sound. They're very much like Talking Heads in terms of having their own style. The lead singer is very interesting, talks about very interesting topics. They had a very visual style, and a lot of their songs are very kind of catchy rock, pop, kind of 80s vibe aesthetic for the most part. And I do like, there is a great quote where David Bowie says that Roxy Music is the only band that matters. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this kind of remix of songs from their first album. Last few ones, I know I've said that quite a few times, but these are the last few ones. Salvador Dali, Dali in Venice. This is Salvador Dali's collection of music. One of the most famous surrealist artists of, probably the most famous surrealist artist. He made music, and they're releasing it on vinyl, and I want to hear it. That's what I can really say. It should be an experience. It's always very interesting to find out. There are a lot of very famous painters and artists that made music. Someone should do like a top 10 countdown of like people who made music. Was it Jean-Michel Basquiat? He made, I'm probably butchering his name, but he made music. Andy Warhol was very heavily influenced and inspired music, obviously, with Velvet Underground, of course. So this would be interesting to add to the collection. Smith & Mighty, The Free Stripe Collection, 1985 to 1990. Smith & Mighty, excuse me, that's someone else. Smith & Mighty, interesting trip-hop, underground, almost-ish lo-fi kind of English duo. They helped produce the first Massive Attack album, so that's kind of why I know about them. To hear a lot more of their songs actually get put out on vinyl, is, you know, I'm really happy to have that, and hopefully I'm going to pick that up. They have one song which I can't remember the name of it right now. I'm trying to think of it, but I'm not going to, you know, look up Smith and Mighty, and you'll probably find it, or I'll maybe talk about it slightly later on. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Time, the soundtrack being released on vinyl. I'm going to hopefully pick that up because that's, you know, I'm a gamer. I like soundtracks. The last soundtrack or game soundtrack I picked on vinyl was the Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon soundtrack back for, I think it was like 2015's Record Store Day, and I picked that up for £20. That's now worth £60, so you never know. Great album, by the way. They're also releasing the soundtrack for Ghost World, which is still one of the best comic book to film adaptations next to Scott Pilgrim, as well as South Park, the bigger the motion picture, the bigger the longer on the cut. They're releasing the soundtrack for that, which I really want to listen to. They're also releasing the soundtrack for The Crow, which I really want because The Crow soundtrack is quite an interesting one. It also has that one Cure song which doesn't fall anywhere except for that soundtrack / the film, so that might be a must-have. And last one I want to quickly talk about is Yes, their first album. Just their first album, the 50th anniversary of Yes's first album, simply titled Yes. So that's pretty much all the stuff I want to hopefully get. I have a much bigger list, but if I was to narrow it down, which I am going to narrow it down, it's probably going to be just those ones for the most part. But yeah, let me know if you guys found this kind of approach of discussion / listing history, music, whatever the hell this section was called, interesting, because I'd like to do stuff like this again, especially with other people, get other people involved to kind of talk about their opinions on certain other things as well. And yeah, let me know if you're going to go to a Record Store Day wherever you are. I believe it takes place pretty much everywhere around the world. I will definitely be there first thing because I don't play when it comes to vinyls. I will get my stuff and I will leave before you even get there. I'm ruthless. I will get my vinyls. I have a bag ready. I have the money put away. You know, no one is stopping me from. This sounds like the prologue to like some kind of like Taken John Wick-esque like film right there. You know, I will get my vinyl. Enough threats. Let's finally wrap up this podcast with the video of the episode, which is going to be Ski Mask the Slump God with the interestingly titled Faucet Failure. AKA, you can also call this music video the next episode in the adventures of Ski Mask the Slump God, because almost every music video he releases or is directed or made is basically very cartoonish and very out there, very Busta Rhymes cartoony-esque. And a very short video. Ski Mask the Slump God, probably the only trap rapper you need to care about, maybe next to Denzel Curry. Everyone else can go piss off. It's all about those two for the most part. And yeah, I want to leave you with something a little bit more different, because last podcast we had a dance house track from a Japanese producer that was Powder, New Tribe. So let's switch it up with some rap trap for the most part, and maybe I'll switch it up with something even crazier, whether I dig out of my archives or maybe someone will drop something new or crazy. I mean, I'm an archive of interesting in terms of like visuals and media. That's what I do. That's why I have this podcast. And let's leave this. Let's leave the podcast there before I get way too egotistical, because I'm pretty happy because I just went over all my Record Store Day picks and I'm excited to get them. So yeah, hopefully you are leaving this podcast in a good mood. I certainly am. Hopefully we will get more people on the next podcast. If not, it'll just be me for the most part. And hopefully you guys have been enjoying, I guess, these solo entries. Let me know if you are. Let me know if you're not. Email me at raccoonplusfriends@gmail.com. Also, if you want to speak to me personally, you can hit me up on Twitter at @TheAngryRaccoon. Only one C in the raccoon. And I guess I'll end this podcast like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon, and I will see you on the next podcast.